Our next speaker coming to the stage is going to talk about the digital side of brand building. Please welcome the apartment bartender, Mr. Elliott Clark.
What's going on, guys? Having a good morning so far? Solid. So yeah, as you said, my name's Elliott. I'm the apartment bartender. I'm sure you're curious what that means. This presentation, just as a heads up, is going to be full of selfies, so brace yourself. Also brace yourself for the most interesting, authentic, and relevant story of your life. Not really. But one of the things I wanted to kind of give you a breakdown of who I am. Some of you might be familiar with who I am and what I do. If you're not, basically, an apartment bartender is 1 ounce semi-decent home bartender, 1 ounce photographer and social media guy, and 2 dashes of I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. So one of the things that I love about that is a lot of figuring it out as I go. You know, I'm in the world of social media, a social media influencer, also do a lot of commercial photography in the spirits industry, and talking and having the opportunity to catch up with what you guys are doing, and on the distributor side or supplier side or the brands, and talking with you guys yesterday. The thing I really loved most about that was hearing your backstory and the fact that a lot of you guys are figuring out things as you go as well. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, because in the weeks leading up to being on stage and having the chance to speak with you, I was racking my brain for what can I say in these 10 minutes that I have that's going to completely revolutionize everything for you. That's going to change everything. That's going to create your story or leave the most significant impact for you. And it kept leading me back to my own story. And the question that I get asked over and over and over with what I do is, how did you get to where you are? Right? How did you get started? In other words, what's your story? And I really believe that the presence that I have on the digital side, the presence that I have with the brands, is all connected to my story. And I think, as far as some of the things that Ted was saying, your story is going to be the most significant thing that's going to drive you to reaching your customers, to reaching your audience. So in my personal story, I'll dive into it really quickly, but it all started in my apartment. Yes, that is my red door. When I first started, I wanted to be like this home bartender, but I remember me and my buddy, we got a little tipsy on too many Negronis, and I was like, you know what, I don't know if I'm a home bartender. I live in a crappy apartment. And he's like, dude, you're an apartment bartender. So that's kind of how it started. And so I just started making drinks and taking pictures of them. And this is kind of where it started. It was like my work of art, right? I just would come home from work, beat the sunset, make a drink, take a picture of it. And one of the things that I kept doing was kept staying consistent in that. Like, that was the value that I wanted to add. That was my recipes. That was my creative outlet. That was something that I kept putting out there on Instagram for people to see. And eventually it changed. Right now I'm doing like the photography for some awesome brands, for some awesome establishments like Death & Company in Denver. And all of that transition and the following that I accumulated, I believe, was connected to, again, my story. And my question to you guys is, from the conversations that I've had, is like really hone in on what your story is. And for me, the things that I've realized about apartment bartender and what I'm doing is it really is connected to vulnerability and authenticity. Right? Ted spoke on the aspect of having that authentic nature to what you're doing. But one of the things, like I was saying, when I was thinking about what I wanted to share and what I really wanted to get across, it kept bringing me back to that aspect of vulnerability. Because I think when you're thinking about your story, there's this thought process that you have to craft like the most creative message, and you have to craft something, and you build this story about what you think your audience wants to hear. And there are so many times when, with what I'm doing, I'm racking my brain for like, what kind of content does my audience want? What does my engagement, what does my following want to see? And then I go back to being vulnerable and digging deep. And I think that's the most important thing in what you guys are doing. Because having the opportunity to meet you and talk with you, there are some brands that I've had the opportunity to speak with here that they don't necessarily know what next steps are. They don't necessarily know when they're going to get national distribution. And I'm not going to dive too much into that because I'm not going to pretend like I know the full scope of the supplier side and the distributor side. There's so much to it that I'm learning. But one thing that I do know, and one thing that I feel like I have become somewhat proficient in, is really being vulnerable with my audience and sharing with them who I am, how I got started. Even things like this, having the opportunity to be on stage with you guys and share my story and share what I'm doing is surreal for me, for somebody that started in his apartment taking pictures of cocktails, and most of the time on the bench outside that looked like it had asbestos because it had like the best light out there. So being and staying connected to who you are and digging deep and sharing that story is something that builds authenticity. That's something that builds trust with your audience. And I really firmly believe that for me, that has been my main driver of success in what I'm doing on social media. Ted was talking about influencers, and the thing and the key to influence being trust. And without that trust, without that vulnerability, without that consistency and putting something authentic out there, people see right through it. And for me, one of the things that's been awesome for me in working with brands is really having the opportunity to travel and get to know the people behind the brand, right? So it started in my apartment, taking pictures of drinks, to being in Ireland, taking whiskey out of a barrel, a Jameson barrel, being in the agave fields in Jalisco and talking with the humidors and seeing the people that make up the brand, and walking through the sugarcane fields in Martinique and St. Lucia and chewing on raw sugarcane, which is actually really tasty, and being able to see what goes into the products that we consume. Or being in Spain with these brands and looking over and seeing like all the people just going absolutely insane at San Fermin and seeing the passion that's in the products. And that's something that I noticed here, and why I'm stoked to be here with you guys, because you guys are so passionate about what you do. You guys are a huge part of the brands, whether you're the founder of it, whether you're on the supplier side or the distributor side. It's so super exciting for me to see everything that makes up who you are. And I think that's something to really stay connected to as you move forward. Maybe thinking about, what do we do from here? What do we do from this WSWA convention? What are the next steps? I think there are a lot of tactics, a lot of strategies that you guys will employ that obviously I don't have time to dive into from a social media perspective. But if there's one thing that I could really leave you with, it's really getting back to like, what's your story? And staying connected to that, staying connected to being vulnerable, staying connected to being authentic in what you put out, because that authenticity, again, and that vulnerability is ultimately going to drive the trust that you build with your customer base. And sometimes it's a little counterintuitive, and it seems ethereal, it seems like it's not tangible, or it's not able to be measured. But I could tell you from what I do, working with brands from small craft brands to bars and establishments to the global brands and the largest brands in the world, they bring me on board to have that trusting conversation with their end user. And that's something that I believe is the foundation of everything that you guys are doing. So if there's anything, again, that I could leave you with, be vulnerable, be authentic, and stay consistent in putting that out, because ultimately that's going to build the trust with your audience. So I appreciate you guys. I think your story is super valuable. Again, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate having the chance to kind of taste some of your spirits. I wish I had a little bit more time here because I didn't get to drink as much as I wanted to. But again, I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck moving forward from this convention. And cheers, y'all.